Hey guys, welcome to the Dave Darren Show. We're going to have a great night tonight. I hope everyone can see us on camera here because the new software I've got is kind of freaky and I never know, like things are not moving on my screen, but I hope they're moving for the audience. So Chad, Jeffrey, and Patrick, give me a thumbs up or say yes, you can hear us. Here we go. Have fun. I think, Jeffrey, can you see us moving? Can you see activity? I'll tell you what, I'm going to get up and dance, okay? Can you see me dancing? I hope Jeffrey can see me. So I've got some great guys on here. We're going to be talking about sci-fi writing. So I'm curious about how many people read books. All right. And let's see. Jeffrey didn't answer yet. I'm hoping someone answers and tells me they can hear us. But I'm curious how many people read books. And I'm not talking Playboy or Playgirl because then we're not reading. We're seeing pictures. And I know that. I'm talking about reading books like a electronic book or a real book. We got some sci-fi writers here. We're going to talk about a book that they've written called, and let me introduce the guys. We got JD. How's it going, JD? And we have Nina.
Hi.
Okay, so you guys are writers. Are you both writers together, or does JD write and you proof it and edit it? How does it work?
Well, the process really is very collaborative. So I do most of the writing, and just about every night that I've finished up my writing, I'll send whatever draft I've been working on over to Nina. And then she'll read through it, and then she'll tell me what she likes and what she doesn't like, and then the next night I'll add on a little bit more. So that's really my side of things. I do the writing, and then she does the illustration, and the critiquing, and keeping the characters true.
And all of the art. So
All
I
of the
designed the cover art and the chapter illustrations.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is when I first started the show, I did a tribute to Art Bell, and you do art. So there we go. There's a little strange connection there, right? But so let me ask you about writing sci-fi, because I don't want to really get into how you write books, because this show is more about science fiction, UFOs. It's not really a literary course in how to write books or anything. I will ask you, though, at the end of it, how people get a copy of your book and how maybe you get your book published, because that might be interesting for some people that want to write sci-fi novels like you guys. They might want to know how to publish and stuff like that. So let me ask you a couple questions. Since you're writing, what's the name of the book, first of all?
Okay, so the name of the book it's called The Blue Jewel, and we actually had one printed. This book is just available for purchase on Amazon Kindle, so it's an ebook. But my sweetheart was kind enough on my birthday; she had it printed through Chapbook, so we have like a physical copy, kind of like an heirloom piece for our family.
Oh, that's really cool.
It's called The Blue Jewel, and later on in the story, about midway, you learn that the blue jewel is how the aliens call Earth. Earth is one of their colonies, and they refer to it as a blue jewel just because of how beautiful it is.
Okay. Now, they came to planet Earth. They landed. And tell us about the story. Was it a hostile takeover? Did they want to take over our planet to suck the resources out? Were the resources humans?
It's nothing that nefarious. Really, it's just it's about colonization. And so the story follows a young man who's maybe one or two generations after Earth has been colonized. And you kind of learn through the course of the story that there was some sort of big war. The characters always call it the Great War, and it's between just the sides of humanity fighting. And after humanity was ruined, that's when the aliens realized, well, now's our chance. So they just kind of stormed on in, and that's when they took it over. And they took over the whole world to milk those resources as anybody would any colony.
Yeah. Now, we see a lot of movies on TV. And of course, you have all the different countries that are not united. They're all at each other's throat. They're creating a big war amongst each other, human versus human, right?
Right.
And you see some of these. Movies like The Day the Earth Stood Still and things of this nature. And when they get invaded by aliens, then suddenly all the countries unite.
Yeah, it's like a classic Independence Day. This is for us.
That's right. So now, is your book like that? Are you talking about that type of scenario where the beings come to Earth? And I think you mentioned that the Great War is what? The Great War was us country to country fighting?
It was like pretty much like China versus America is how it's kind of insinuated.
And
just the two big global superpowers as we think about them now, just us versus them. And those kind of themes really carry over. There's not really a unification just about ever. So not only are there multiple races of aliens that are kind of fighting over the colony of Earth, but there are also multiple factions on Earth. Even within the rebellion, the human rebellion, there are different factions about, well, how should we be treated? How should we, seek help from other aliens? Should we just do it ourselves? What should our common purpose and goals be? So the humans in this, but they don't really unite through the Independence Day, the goodwill for all kind of thing. I think that's one of the more interesting parts about the book is just the politics involved.
Yeah. I hear the cat in the background.
That's our Russian blue.
So I'm assuming he disagreed with you, right?
Yeah.
He always comes with me into the office, so because I'm seated in front of the computer, he thinks it's his time to be with me.
There you go. There you go.
He's my assistant.
Yeah, he might come up later for an appearance.
Maybe he will. He's going to come up there now. There we go. There's a cat. Looks like an alien. He's a black cat. Don't put him under a ladder while we're doing the show, because I've had enough bad luck this week. I don't need the black cat going under a ladder. Don't have that happen. So
as long as it doesn't cross the screen, I think you're okay. So.
There we go. By the way, if anyone wants to call and talk to you guys, the phone number to call in and be part of the show tonight is 609-467-4000. Of course, we got Patrick on, we got Jeffrey on, and we got Ron Beckjoy, we got Chris. Chris Zimmerman. Okay, let me put the phone. I'm going to put the phone number in the chat too, so you guys know what to call. 609-467-4000. It's a good number. It's easy to remember. Call in and talk to these guys and ask them some questions. The first question I'm going to ask you is, when you're writing sci-fi, and I hope that cat didn't eat baked beans, by the way.
Yeah, we're okay. You're not in any immediate danger either. So.
Oh, okay, there we go. When you guys write sci-fi material, do you write based upon fantasy and fabrications in your mind, or have you guys seen or witnessed any UFOs in the sky? You walk in the sky at night, it's late at night, you see something glowing in the sky. Does that give you your inspiration to write sci-fi, or is it true, pure fantasy?
Okay, we did watch every episode of X-Files when we were first married because it was on Netflix, and so there's a little bit of that inspiration.
Yeah, but I'd say not really. We haven't really had any real life experiences. I don't know if we would discount the experiences of others. I'm sure that they've seen what they've seen, but most of our stories just come from things we've seen in real life. And we thought, well, wouldn't this be cool to retell in a space setting or a sci-fi setting?
Go ahead, your turn.
And we also just moved to the desert, so just the allure of a mysterious new landscape and just some of sci-fi books we've read before and sci-fi shows that we've seen and just information about different aliens kind of comes to mind because we've never been in Arizona before, and it's just mysterious in itself, and it allows for those sorts of stories to be created.
Wow.
And that's really how sci-fi is best told. It's the familiar, but it's still strange at the same time.
Yeah, true. By the way, we'll say hello to Greg Arnett, who just joined.
Hi, Greg.
Greg's here. He says hello, everyone. Says hello to you guys as well. Let me ask you this question. I'm curious about this. Do you actually believe in UFOs? Do you believe that there's intelligence beyond what's his name now? I forget his name, but do you believe that there's intelligence outside of our planet Earth?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there probably is. I mean, the universe is just so big, and why would we be the lucky ones just to be floating around on our planet?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm also curious about this, since you guys are writers. I read a lot of books. I don't know how many people do read books these days. I think a lot of people do, though. Do you think a lot of people read books, or are they entrenched in movies and they don't spend the time to read a book? What do you think about that?
I just always loved reading books. It's interesting now how instantaneous information is from a screen, and so sometimes sitting down to read a book seems like it takes up too much time for people, but really that's where the magic of a story happens, and you could adventure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just makes for such a richer, fuller experience. So we watch movies and TV shows all the time. We're not knocking that, but there's just something so satisfying about reading a book, and you become part of the author too. Like with the words on the page, they only give you enough just to kind of build the image in your head. You really do the rest, and that's something that we both enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think sci-fi lends itself? For instance, recently I read a book. I read one of the Star Trek books. Mm-hmm. So I'm reading the book, and of course I know the characters in Star Trek because it had the Kirk, McCoy, and all those guys in it, and Spock and all that. So I'm reading the book, and the words are I'm able to see the words and Spock, and I'm able to visualize Spock in my head. So it's an easier read because I can associate the picture of the character with the words in the book. Now, when people read a book like you guys, and you're not writing for Star Trek or Star Wars, so the character's not as vividly in people's mind, yet people's imaginations in books are what you want to trigger. But do you think sci-fi works itself better in movies than most books do?
Okay, so I read a lot more soft sci-fi than really intense technical sci-fi. So for me, I don't really understand a lot of the technical descriptions that they have. So I would prefer visual.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Plus, visual's got a better for sci-fi visual nowadays, especially with the CGI and all the graphics.
Oh yeah,
you can really open up those worlds. I think the first time I really was like, wow, was watching Avatar.
Yeah.
Maybe like 10 years ago now, but that was really the first. It wasn't really that great of a movie. You know, it was like Dances with Wolves, but in space. But just visually, you're like, wow, this is just beautiful.
Yeah.
And so I think that it really helps you immerse yourself more into sci-fi worlds and other worlds just because of what's possible, like you said, through that CGI.
Yeah, maybe they need pop-up books. Remember, maybe you don't remember this, you're younger than me, but they used to have pop-up books. You'd read a book, turn a page, and then there's a pop-up. Right? Pop-up books would help give you a little extra imagery. So, by the way...
It's interesting you talking about the characters.
Ahead.
Oh, when you're talking about the characters, like you were familiar with Star Trek because you watched it, I'm sure, as a kid and growing up, and now when you're reading those books, that's who the characters become to you. But even as we were writing and discussing, we even had characters like movie stars in mind to play some of these characters. It's like as we were going through it, like we have this wordy description of here's the character in the book, but then just talking amongst ourselves, we'd say, oh, this is kind of like Will Smith, this would be Scarlett Johansson, or this is whoever the character would best be represented by, like Letty from Fast and Furious. Those kind of characters still take shape in the writing, which I think is it's neat.
You know who'd be great in one of your books? You know who would be good to adapt? I'll tell you who a good movie actor for your book would be.
Yeah. We can actually write you into the next book too, but I think you would have a place in the movie.
Oh, there you
so
go.
We're going to talk to Steven Spielberg, and we'll put in a good word for you.
Yeah, I'm the one in NASA control saying launch the missiles, right? I'm that guy. So, by the way, Greg Miller says, I agree. I tend to read information online. Information online. I wonder if Greg, does that mean he reads a lot of ebooks? A lot of people now, they read ebooks.
It really is just so. It's such a popular thing, especially for people that do like to read a lot.
Yeah.
You still have the purists that want to have the paper and the smell and the whole experience. But I mean, you can fit thousands of books just on a Kindle like this. You can take it with you wherever you go, and they're so cheap and affordable.
You have to get one to really understand what it's like. I was against them for years because I prefer a paper book and I love the smell. But I got one for my birthday from Jeff, and I have a gazillion books in it now, and I always keep it in my bag.
You find yourself reading more, I think, just because it's so easy to slip in a purse or a bag and take to the doctor's office or just wherever you are that you're stuck somewhere you don't really want to be, you can just read.
Yep, and they came down in price a lot because when I bought my first e-reader, which is made by Sony, they used to be like $350, and if you drop a paperback in the water, you get off the bus, you trip on a high heel. I don't know, does Nina wear high heels? You trip on a high heel. Book falls on the electronic book falls on the floor. It's all wet because it's been heavy rain. You lost $350. If you drop a regular paperback in the street, you lost $7, but then you didn't lose $7 to $12. You didn't lose it. You dry it out on the radiator because I'm from the East Coast. We still have radiators in the old houses. You dry the book off, you open it up, and you can read it again, right? So let me ask you guys this question. I was going to ask you who would star in your movie. You answered that question already. So let me cover my cheat sheet because you evidently are not used to...
keep that a little lower. We're looking right over it.
Yeah, I'm going to lower it. Okay. We do this interview like Catholic school. Don't cheat, okay? So when you think about sci-fi and the characters, do you think about characters individually, or do you think about characters? Do you generate a character isolated on its own, or you need the multiple characters to be able to figure out how to write the book?
Okay, it's really cute. He was an engineer about his characters. I'll just start with that.
Yes, so professionally, I'm a systems engineer, so I do a lot of too much thinking. I overthink things sometimes. So I realized that I had these roles that I wanted to fill, and I kind of knew the basics of how the characters would be. But in order to really shape them, like I ended up taking all these personality tests online as if I was the characters. And when you do that, you realize that that shapes their interactions between them, right? It's like it makes for more natural dialogue flows. It makes for more natural conflict and resolution if you shape your characters that way. So you kind of have a like a gut feeling of who you want them to be when you go in. Mm-hmm. But at least I found for us, they developed as we were starting to flesh out the story.
And you have to put them in an Excel spreadsheet.
That's right. It's not a real book for a sci-fi writer if it's not in Excel.
Right. Exactly. Do you think? Let's get to now talking about UFOs and stuff like that and aliens. Mm-hmm. You said you do believe that there's life on other planets.
Sure.
Do you think that there's life on other planets that are more developed than us intellectually? I'm sure you probably do think that. I believe that too. Not everyone's as stupid as Joe Biden, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a good point. So I remember as a kid growing up, going to school, my younger sisters never thought too much of me just because, oh, that's just my goofy older brother. So I'd come back from school just thinking my head was this big, like I'm so smart. And then they'd still laugh at me when I would, stumble or forget to tie my shoes or something. So even if there are aliens that are so much smarter than us, they're still going to end up, spilling ketchup on their shirts when they eat. They're probably just regular folks just like us, but maybe just a little bit smarter.
Yeah. Well, it's funny where you said your sister was making those comments. She said you had a big head, and then you started thinking.
I'm sure I did at the time, not now.
But, and then you're thinking, I've got a big head. You know what? I'm going to start writing about aliens with big heads. So she's the one that gave you the inspiration for that.
That's right. Yeah, inspiration from all sources.
So I'm going to ask you this question. Some people, obviously, I have not seen any UFOs. I haven't seen any lights in the sky. You guys are in Tucson. Phoenix had the Phoenix Lights at some point. I'm going to have to try to figure out where to go to potentially see the Phoenix Lights. I want to see if there's a group out there that goes or a location to go, because I want to see if I can witness anything like that. I think that'd be fascinating. Do you guys think that UFOs have actually visited Earth? I don't mean landing, but do you think that they have actually found the planet Earth and that they are potentially flying around someplace where they could get sighted by people that claim that they've seen them, and indeed maybe they have seen them? What do you think about that? Have they found us?
I've always been so curious about encounters that I've read about. I mean, who would want to go and have a bunch of people not believe them if they were to put out a statement that said, oh, I saw this UFO on this date? Like, there's got to be some truth to their encounter, and I also just want to be able to talk with them about it and see how it happened.
And just because the diversity of experiences is so wide, and just because of how incredulous that experience would be, if they wanted, they could do whatever they want. They can go hang out at the mall and just nobody would believe anybody else. Mm-hmm. Even in the day of smartphones with taking videos and everything, if they looked similar to humanoids, I mean, the variety of people that are on this planet doing weird things, like all the Florida Man stories you hear about, they could do whatever they wanted to
and just blend in.
Yeah, they just blend right in.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think actually that they've landed on planet Earth and that they have dispersed themselves, or whether they can camouflage themselves? Do you think that there's any among us?
If there were, I think they'd be more like tourists, just like us, how we like to travel around and see beautiful things. Mm-hmm. I mean, for how rare Earth is, it might be very different from their planet. So if they were to come here, they'd not only enjoy our culture and our food and watching the movies that we like and those kind of things, but I'm sure they'd go visit the Grand Canyon. They'd go see the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, and they just go sightseeing.
And even try to talk like us. I know whenever we're visiting different countries, we try to blend in as much as we can to feel more local.
Oh, wow. So if they happen to land in Philadelphia and they called the word water instead of water.
Yeah.
Right?
They'd be like, got it.
Yeah. There'd be some alien walking around who's developed muscles saying, hey, yo, Adrian, right? Or some guy like that, right?
And then I take all those pictures of them running down the steps of, what was it, like the library there? They had the classic Rocky shot. That's exactly right.
You see a big green man with big muscles saying, hey, yo, Adrian, which is the Incredible Hulk was green, right, with the muscles.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Maybe he's not even acting. Maybe it's the real guy.
Yeah, maybe it's the real guy. So do you think that, now your book is more, tell us about the aliens. They've landed on planet Earth. and the whether it was the Americans and the Chinese, doesn't matter, but our
Right.
countries are at war with each other, and they come down to planet Earth because it's an opportune moment to take over the planet. Is that what the idea here is?
Right. So the premise was they'd been watching for a long time, just kind of getting ready, and then they saw how Earthlings just destroyed themselves, and there was no one really left to protect themselves, and so they just took that opportunity.
Uh-huh. Do you think that I've read I've been reading online a little bit more than I used to before I started doing the show. And there's a couple perspectives. There's even a guy out there who says, here's the 10 reasons why planet Earth would be taken over by aliens, and here's why planet Earth would not be taken over by aliens. So I remember one of them that kind of stood out in my mind is, aliens would be, to get here, they'd have to have a technology that far exceeds ours. We haven't even gotten anywhere yet except for the moon. And I had a guy come on not long ago who said he doesn't believe humans or beings physically walked on the moon. And so these guys come here from another planet. They've got all the technology to get here. I wouldn't think that they would want humans as a resource to take to their planet and work or do anything, because the robots that they've got can obviously have more power, and as far as their muscles go, they'll be able to be controlled unless their artificial intelligence made them rebel and all that.
And you don't have to feed a robot either, right?
You don't have to feed a robot. So do you think that aliens that would come here would be less hostile than we may think they would be? You think that?
Maybe it's just the cynic in me, but I think it would be like when the Europeans came to the Americas. Like, I don't think it would end well for us if the aliens were to come here.
Okay.
Just because anytime you have a power imbalance like that, absolute power corrupts absolutely. I don't think they would be benevolent if they didn't have to be. It's a very rare trait.
Well, Nina doesn't agree with you. Look at her. Look at her over there.
I just like to think that everybody likes everyone else, and that we all just want to hang out together and paint. So
this is why we're the perfect couple.
Wow.
Yeah, and that everybody would love cats too. So.
So you think that they would come here, and JD thinks that they'd be more hostile, more wanting to take over, right? Mm-hmm. What do you think that they would want from planet Earth? What's our most valuable resource here that you think an alien would want to take the most advantage of?
I mean, we've got water, we've got all sorts of metals and other like diamond resources, those kind of things. There's also the human capital, where if they don't have their robots ready to do stuff, they can always have humans, be the slaves for them to do whatever they need to do, for all their Bitcoin mining or whatever it is they want to do on Earth. Huh. It could also just be a good pit stop for them to go to the next planet. Just how we used to have coal refilling stations, or how airplanes need to stop occasionally and get gas and refuel and go somewhere else. It might just be that simple. We're just a pit stop for them.
Yeah. That's
a very cute pit stop.
Yeah, it's a nice pit stop.
They call Earth the pit. We're the pit on planet Earth. We are the pit, right?
Yeah.
There was a sci-fi series that was on TV, and the first episodes were really good. When it got into series 2, it kind of fell apart.
Yeah.
And it was called Space 1999. It had this guy Martin Landau in it, and the first series was really good. And actually, you mentioned a theme that they actually had in one of their episodes in series 1. And the theme was that their whole idea of that show was they were on the moon, and that's where Earth had dropped all the nuclear waste. And what happened is eventually the nuclear waste built up to be more explosive than they had predicted it to be. So it blew up and blew the moon out of the orbit of the Earth. So now the moon is actually traveling in space at some rapid speed. Some people said it wasn't realistic because of a lot of concepts. But one of the episodes was that the moon actually got between two planets. And I believe, if I can remember, there were the two planets, and they were orbiting the sun, or their sun, and they couldn't actually see each other because they were on opposite sides.
Oh, classic. Okay.
And then the moon from planet Earth, that had been expelled from planet Earth due to the nuclear destruction, actually came in orbit around their sun, strategically placed so it could be that pit stop to be the landing point to create a war and land hostile missiles there and attack the fellow planet on the other side that they typically couldn't reach. So it's an interesting concept. So I'm curious, do you think that human beings have limited ourselves with space where we could have been further along than we are now because we landed on the moon in the 60s? Do you think, are you disappointed that we haven't gone beyond that?
Well, I mean, the reasons why we went to the moon initially, it was because of war anyways. We understood that if we were able to get to the moon, we could also launch, nuclear warheads against our USSR opponents right at the time. It's all based on the politics.
That I didn't know. I didn't know that, really.
Yeah, it's all based on that kind of technological warfare. Like, the smarter we become, we can do these great mankind achievements, like put men on the moon. But if we can launch a rocket and hit the moon, we can also launch a nuclear attack on somebody we don't like.
Yeah.
So a lot of those kind of achievements that we had, they have those kind of like hidden purposes. It was for warfare. And so maybe that's why there's not the big push now to go to other places, just because it wouldn't gain us anything in terms of those kind of economic circumstances, right? So maybe that in itself is kind of a disappointment. Like, I wish there was more of a reason to go explore. It used to be mankind would just go exploring, but even then it was to go find spices, or it was to go find gold, or whatever it is people were interested at the time. There's always some sort of economic or political motivation.
Yeah, interesting. Let's take a couple questions from the chat here. Let's see. Misty says, do you think astronauts have seen aliens? What do you guys think?
Do we think astronauts have seen aliens? I don't know. I mean, I think there have been a lot of movies about that, where the astronauts got attacked on the moon, or even the movie where they were on Mars and the similar kind of things happened. I don't know. I think they might have a list of strange, unexplained phenomenon they've witnessed. They're just like, maybe people aren't ready to hear about these things yet. Maybe we don't have a good enough explanation for ourselves, and there's no need to panic people, so we're not going to share. I imagine it'd be mostly like radio signals, or maybe some sort of message they can't decrypt or something. But in terms of meaning another being, maybe not. I don't know.
Well, there was a little time capsule sent out, wasn't there?
Right. Yeah. The I think it was the Voyager.
Yeah.
Capsules where we would send out just it was like a big golden like record essentially that had like a brief history of mankind and a lot of the music and things. So.
Yeah. I think it had the Beatles.
That'd be cool if somebody found it.
It would be fun if we found somebody else's that they sent, 100,000 years ago. It just kind of lands on Earth one day. That'd be neat too.
Yeah, like a message in a bottle type of thing, right? Let's see. Someone else, Sparky says here, I doubt that. I guess she was talking about. Okay, so Sparky tagged along with Misty's question about, do you think astronauts have seen aliens? And she says, I doubt that because their intelligence level far surpasses our intelligence, right? It has been said that that one that was housed at Area 51 had an IQ of 200. What do you think about Area 51? Have you thought about that? You're close enough to go to it. It's hard to
get. Right? I'm very curious. Like, we live next to this like little mountain formation that looks like it's been a setting in so many different sci-fi movies, and I'm just curious, like, what's hidden underneath, or if there's a secret passage that nobody knows about because it's behind the mine. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, just some sort of secret, just like what they think is going on to Area 51. I'm not really sure. I mean, you get like the X-Files ideas, like, what are they hiding, or I don't know. I mean, that'd be a reasonable spot to put something. And if you wanted to hide it, maybe you would want to make a legend about it, like, oh, it's aliens. That way nobody believes you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like hiding in plain sight. That makes sense.
Well, let's see if I got any more questions here. I've got one, so while I read the queue here, I'll ask you questions. Do you think if a spaceship landed in Tucson, if it landed in your backyard, how would you feel? Like, I don't know. I know in Arizona here in Phoenix, they say 1 in 3 people carries a firearm. So I'm not going to ask you if you carry a firearm, but if an alien landed in your backyard, would you take your firearm or any type of weapon like a bat, like a slingshot? Would you take something out there because you'd be terrified? What do you think? What would your reactions be?
Probably sounds about right. Yeah. Not in my backyard.
What do you think you would be scared? Would you like call up the police and expect some weaponry there because you're scared out of your mind? I mean, you're scared if your next door neighbor comes over and he's in your backyard. You're scared of that. How about an alien? Could be more frightening. What do you think about that?
Well, I would hope that they'd first trip over all of the toddler toys in the backyard and buy me some more time to figure out what to do. But yeah, I don't know.
I think the experience would just be so startling. We just both kind of look at each other and just wonder what to do.
Uh-huh. Do you think
in those moments, we probably just freeze up, honestly.
Yeah, I think I would too. I think I even said that in one of my shows. I think my first reaction would be to literally freeze up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think if I'm driving down the highway and there's a light over my head, I think hopefully I wouldn't freeze up with my foot still on the gas pedal, or I'm still going to be moving. But I think I would literally probably freeze up. That'd be my first reaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's very much like our own little cats. When they hear a noise, they just stop and they're like, "Should I move? Where is it coming from? And which direction do I need to run?" Like, so that would be my initial reaction.
Yeah, but I mean,
like, are they dangerous?
At the same time, though, it's such an interesting experience. Would you want to run away from something that special? Mm-hmm. You know, like after a moment, if you can realize, well, I don't think I'm in any danger.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an experience of a lifetime. I mean, I wouldn't want to turn that down.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting. When I first met my wife, she froze, and now that we've been married 25 years, I think she would have rather run away. I think that's the reaction.
Hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah. Let's see. We got Greg here. He says the sensation of being watched and absence of God on the moon. I see. It's hard to read. Some of the questions are entangled with one another, so then it's hard to read one because it's not isolated. It's like a little rolling chat thing.
Get lines at a time. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. It's hard to read that. So I wish people would call in and then they could ask the question instead of me trying to. Because I'll pick out one of the chat things, and then because it's connected to the one before it, then I got to scroll up, read that one, and scroll up and read the prior one to finally get the context it was written in. So if anyone wants to call and talk to the guys here, we've got Nina and we got JD here who have written a book called The Blue Jewel. Call in at 609-467-4000. I got my phone here. People seem to be scared to call in. Don't be afraid to call in. This is a bunch of friends here, right? Do you think that the human race is prepared to meet aliens? Like I mentioned, you guys, an alien comes, lands in your backyard. You don't think so? You don't think the human race is prepared?
No, we're also awkward at the grocery store. Like, it's just a basic place where we visit every week. Like,
a human intuition. Like I got to build a wall because there's somebody else over on the other side we want to keep out. So in anyone different than us, it's always an us versus them. It's a natural tribalism of human instinct. It's unfortunate, but that's really the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. I got a couple chat things here. I got one thing. Aliens have shut down nuclear facilities on Earth. So it is said. Now, I know that we've shut down some of the nuclear plants due to things that have happened in 3 Mile Island. For instance, I used to live in Pennsylvania. 3 Mile Island is close to the Philadelphia.
It's very close, right?
Yeah, it's pretty close. Do you think that aliens have come here and sabotaged anything that we've got going on, whether it be nuclear power plants, or did they sabotage MTV and that's why we got the Kardashians? What do you think?
Yeah, just to keep us dumb instead of wise.
Keep us dumb, right? Keep us dumb.
Yeah, but they want to limit our, understanding of good music.
But do you think that they've done anything here to infiltrate or sabotage in an attempt to, in the future, maybe take us over? Have they sabotaged our government? Or have they sabotaged anything that you think that they did? Do you think anything like that has happened?
I don't know. We actually have a Titan Missile Museum close by here in Tucson that we went to go visit. And just learning a little bit about it, they kind of explained reasons why they shut it down. I can't remember because it was very sciencey, but the green was really pretty.
Yes, so the Titan missiles were the missile batteries that we would bury underground and just point right at Russia. And the Russians knew we had them. It was like a missile deterrent. Don't shoot us because we'll shoot you right back automatically. And so they've been decommissioned since, I guess, back in maybe the 80s or 90s. But, I mean, there's facilities all over, and there's all sorts of happenings. And as clumsy as humans are, I don't know if we would need much sabotaging. Maybe I want to take back my comments from earlier about being cynical about aliens just wanting to come in and kill us. If anything, it might be the reverse. Maybe they've been kind of helping us not destroy ourselves as quickly, because I'm sure there's been many near accidents or near mishaps that would have looked like divine intervention to somebody. Maybe it was aliens trying to help us not blow each other up.
Now, do you think, I'm curious about this because some people believe in time travel. I used to actually have a DeLorean. And if I could have gotten that flux capacitor,
Yeah.
you can't find you cannot find a good used flux capacitor. The new ones are too expensive. I wanted to get a used
one. Especially on eBay, the market is just,
yeah, come on now. Give me a flux
seller's
capacitor.
market.
But do you think, like you mentioned about aliens that might have been protecting us from destroying ourselves, do you think that it'd be hard to do that because humans really don't have, a lot of humans don't have a predestined course. Like things happen impulsively. I think that if we destroy each other, there's going to be some impulse or something that's going to happen just based upon that moment's thought. So if that happens, it's going to be hard for an alien to say, this moment we're going to protect planet Earth before that issue happens. Do you think that there is time travel where the aliens could have gone back in time to have protected us against a certain incident that took place? Do you believe in time travel? Either way, forward or backwards?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I necessarily believe in going backward in time, but maybe that's such a hard thing to think about. I mean, with all the wormholes and what people think about the wormholes going in and out of time
and wrinkles in time,
right? Like wrinkle in time kind of ideas. I suppose it's possible.
Yeah, I know a lot of people think that going forward in time is more possible than going backwards in time. I forget the rationale or the reasons for that. Of course, there's more dangers going back in time because all the paradoxes and everything they talk about.
The butterfly effect and everything else.
Yeah, so I know people think that that's dangerous. I guess going forward in time is not as dangerous, especially if you can go forward, but then you can't go back to even where you started before you went forward because you could have gone forward and then brought something back from the future and skewed the timeline from that point going forward. Right? So as long as you go forward but can't go backwards, it may be safer for life as it is now. I don't know. What do you're going to say?
It might be more of an idea of like all these dimensions. You know, so some people believe that every choice creates like its own dimension. And so if you were to go back in time, it wouldn't be back in time per se, but it'd be to another dimension that was similar, except for maybe one or two things. And so if you were to change something, the original course of your own reality would be unchanged, but you would be living in another version like it, like an alternative reality.
Like beside each other.
Yeah, it would be like a parallel identity at that point. So that to me makes more sense than going back in time in the same continuum.
Yeah, you know, that brings up a thought process. Because on a couple of shows ago, I came up, I didn't have any guests on, so I just talked on my own. Can you believe that? I could carry on a conversation for a full hour on my own? But I actually said I had this freaky, scary experience when I was traveling 3 o'clock in the morning. And I brought this up. Some of the guys watching tonight may not know I even talked about this. But you start driving at 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning. And thank God I found that guy, Art Bell, because I told you he kept me alert, awake, so I didn't listen to music or I didn't listen to anything at all. Because you can get into some pretty dead spots when you get in the middle of nowhere.
Right. Even with satellite radio, you can, yeah.
Yeah, especially when you're in the desert, which I'm in Phoenix. If you go from the desert, like you guys are in Tucson, if you go to Vegas, there's some dead spots with there's no cell phone communication.
It's very isolating. Right?
Yeah, it is. It's it'll give you a freaky, scary time of mind. And I remember I had these dark moments. Fortunately, I never did any of this, but I remember I was driving, and in my mind, I was thinking about the dangers of driving at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. I didn't have the radio on because if I listened to music, I was going to crash and burn. And then my wife would get $500,000 of life insurance. So I guess that's why she probably sabotaged the radio. It didn't work anyway. But yeah, you start getting these dark feelings like, oh my God, there's something out there. Or you get a dark feeling that, if I turn the steering wheel accidentally or on purpose, my life is going to end. And those dark emotions of seclusion kind of scare you. Do you think about that when do you think about a dark side when you write sci-fi, or will you think of a dark side?
Ooh, yeah, absolutely. I think that within all of us there is those tendencies to have those types of feelings or those types of impulses. I personally believe that anyone is capable of anything. So there's always some few people in the world, like everyone has like their great grandma that's just the sweetest thing, sweetest pie. But for the most part, just about anybody is capable of anything. And if you're to put them in the wrong types of environments and put them with the wrong types of people, with the wrong types of circumstances, they could do things like murder, they could do things like steal. they could do all sorts of atrocities. I think that anybody is capable of anything. And that's really one of the themes in our book, The Blue Jewel, is that this idea of like the monster. When a human commits some sort of act of violence or aggression or just something just horrendous, we tend to think of them as less than human. Like we want to think, oh, they're just a monster. When really they were just regular people. They might have been closer to losing their mind than most, but they just had the right sets of pressures. They had the right sets of the mental breakdowns. They had the right sense of just
triggers.
Just the triggers that set them off. I think that just about anybody is capable of anything, and that's why we need to surround ourselves, with the good in the world.
Yeah, that's true. Especially nowadays, you get on social media. That's why I kind of moved into doing this show, because I was looking for an outlet of something positive, something fun, something interesting, something to talk about. And I thought this is a better thing than going into anything else that you see on social media at all, which is kind of devastatingly, it can really affect you. It can turn you to that dark side, right? Yeah. Now, when I asked you the previous question about, I'm driving on the road and I had these visions of me, going off the road. And if I ever have like a traffic accident, or here's something, if I have a near miss, like I think there was one time, there was. I was with a buddy of mine. He was driving his car. And I saw a guy on a skateboard going into the intersection. And I actually turned my friend's steering wheel to avoid hitting him. And he would have hit him. And probably, depending on the incident, he could have either seriously hurt him. Maybe it wouldn't have hurt him at all. He would have been a Superman guy and jumped over the car. Or maybe he would have killed him. So then you start thinking you always start thinking about, okay, so I saved this situation from happening now. But is there an alternate universe where my friend did hit that guy is dead? And is there that alternate universe where everything that could have happened has happened? Do you think that there is that alternate universe?
I'd never thought of that before, actually.
It's easy to believe those kinds of things just because after there is such a tragic accident, it's natural human instinct to think, oh, if only I had, gone a different way to work that day. If only I had been the one to pick up the kids. If only we had, done this instead, we would have been able to avoid whatever catastrophe it was. And so it's such a natural instinct to believe in those types of things that maybe there are other parallel realities or dimensions like that.
Yeah. Jeremiah here, who was actually a guest on my show, Jeremiah was talking about remote viewing, if you know what that is. If not, I'll tell you a little bit about it. But Jeremiah here asks, he says, here's a question. Why do you think aliens chose or mark specific people and continually abduct/revisit them? Now, I haven't asked you guys if you believe in alien abduction, where aliens have either come on the planet Earth, or maybe they can't land on Earth because of our atmospheric conditions, which was, I think, the case of War of the Worlds, where aliens actually entered our atmosphere, and then our bacteria killed them. So do you think alien abduction is a possibility? And if you do you think alien abduction would have to happen from space via some kind of a beam into a human to abduct them so that they would have the capacity to breathe our atmosphere and adapt to our bacteria? Do you think that there is
somehow turn us into like lab rats or something?
Yeah. Do you think that's a case that could happen, has happened? What do you think about that? Could or has?
I don't know.
I don't know either. I mean, luckily we've not had those experiences ourselves. I mean, if it really was something they were capable of doing, it might be more like they're somehow able to infiltrate our minds. It's kind of like not necessarily plugging into us through some sort of physical means, but they're able to just cyberkinetically or something, just able to, get inside our heads and control us that way. That I think makes more sense to us.
Okay. Do you think that if humans, what do they say? Humans use like 5% of their brains or something like that. And if they do, I use 3% of mine. So I'm below that 5% of the brain thing. But if we use 5% or 10%, whatever the percentage is, I remember it's very low. If we could develop our brains to a larger capacity, do you think we would be able to evolve from our current state of human flesh into something where we no longer need the flesh? Have you ever thought about that?
Wow. No, but I did learn that your skin is the biggest organ, so it'd take a lot of work to replace it.
Yeah. To be able to turn yourself into like some sort of Futurama like the head in the glass jar walking on the little mechanical creature or something.
Yeah, it would just take a lot of work, I think.
Yeah.
Take a lot of
taxing. I don't know.
Take a lot of work to replace that skin, especially if you are Cardassian. It would take a lot of extra effort. Right?
It's mostly plastic anyways, I guess.
Yeah, it's plastic, right? Yeah, that's right. They wouldn't need the plastic. They throw the plastic out to get the normal body. Let's see, buddy. Ron Beck says, I'm writing a story where time travelers encounter a four-dimensional creature when time jumping. So that's interesting. He's writing a book. So Ron Beck, maybe listen to the show as we get to the end of it, where you can tell him how to maybe submit material to be presented. I know your book's on Amazon.com, so we can talk about that. And he continues on. I don't know if I should do a graphic novel or a regular book. Now I know Nina does the graphics for your book, and we already talked about movies and sci-fi genre having a little bit of an edge or a larger edge based upon having the ability to, when it's transposed into a movie, to have the graphics, the video, the CGI, and all that going for it, to bring you the imagery so that it even surpasses the book to that degree. But of course, the book is a little bit more detailed, and you get more into the character development. So do you think, according to Ron, he says, what do you think about a graphic novel versus a regular book? So he's thinking about writing a book. What do you recommend to Ron?
Definitely the graphic novel for today's generation. A lot of artists now are focusing on bringing back comic books and focusing on graphic novels. So that's what draws people's attention. I mean, we have a lot of screens in our homes, but once you can take that picture from the screen and put it in book form, they're able to capture the viewer's attention. And so especially with the time traveling and the four dimensions, that would be really neat to capture in a visual format.
Right, just because it'd be such a hard thing just to describe with words. But if you were to see some sort of picture of like, well, how does that look to you as the author?
Yes.
I think that'd just be amazing as a graphic novel. I say go for it as a graphic novel.
Okay, cool. Another question here from Greg. He says he believes that time is like a river. So now, do you believe that humans have a destiny that they can't change? And for instance, now I'll mention this. Jeremiah does remote viewing. And that's something where you can view a certain fact, or so you have to target from, and I'll have to get Jeremiah maybe to type some stuff out. But you target something and you visit it via remote viewing. There's a set of the number calculations. There's you have to pick a certain. You set up a criteria to kind of focus in on this one element, whatever the element is. So now, do you believe that time is a river? And even if we knew through remote viewing that this is the destiny some 10 years later, do you believe we have any opportunity to change the course of that river so that the destiny at the far end changes? Or do you think if you understood where you were going to end up 10 years from now, that there's no way of changing it because it's locked? Do you ever think about that? Or in a book, you're probably thinking a lot of stuff because you're book writers.
Yeah, right.
How about this one?
Does a character have destiny? Does a character have agency?
Yeah, what do you think?
Those are big questions.
I don't like people telling me what to do, so I prefer that there be more choice in destinations and where people want themselves to be and where they want to go.
Well, and yet you are married. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's still my choice.
JD, what do you think about?
Oh, 7 years, we're still getting along. This is working out great.
There you go. There you are.
No one told me to marry him.
What do you think, JD? Do you think your destiny is our path that we cannot change, or what do you think about that?
I don't want to believe that either, whether it's true or not. I like the idea of us having our agency, that we can make our choices and choose the good things, and then more good things come to you. And I mean, the bad and the good happen to just about everybody. So maybe there are overall events that it might be outside of our control. But how we respond to them, and those are some of the best stories of like the triumph of the human spirit when somebody overcomes, even in dark circumstances. Those are often some of the best stories to read. And I don't know if that's necessarily something that's like some sort of talent or trait that those people have. I think it's a choice. I think you're able to choose to do something good out of those. So I mean, there are some things I believe, like the biggest decisions tend to make themselves. And you might have heard that expression before, but for the most part, I think it's our small actions that define who we are, and we really choose our own destiny.
Okay. Bob here asked a question because I'm trying to monitor the chat at the same time I'm talking to you. That's why I'm moving back and forth all the time. But I'm not rocking out to music here.
Yeah.
So Bob says he drove a truck during third shift, and there were times, 3 to 5 of them, that made you feel like you were being watched or someone was watching you. Do you ever have that feeling when you're alone? Your wife is here now, and you, for instance, your wife goes on a business trip, or you go on a business trip, and one of you are alone. Do you ever have a feeling that you're being watched?
It's unnerving, isn't it?
Mhm.
Whether you're in a public space and everyone's just kind of doing their own thing, but you feel like you're being like singled out or something, or whether you're all alone and you have that feeling, it's unnerving. I've had that before.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's more scary
Yeah.
to be in isolated and being watched than it is in that large group. Because even in a large group, you're being watched. That's okay. Maybe someone's thinking you're an attractive guy or an attractive girl, and they want to get
Yeah,
to know you.
I don't
Right?
think I've ever.
But it is definitely more scary when you're isolated and you're alone. Because I get that feeling more when I'm isolated,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
and I just kind of feel like I'm watched, and it's kind of really spooky, right? So Nina,
Yeah.
have you had that feeling?
Yeah, in college, my roommate called it demon hour at like 3 a.m. and it was always the most quiet time of the night, and that's when you just like would feel like somebody was watching you. You just have those eerie feelings of just a different presence around you. And so I remember she told me about that, and then like I was working on homework or a project, and then like I just felt like there was just some creepy presence, or just like I was being watched, and I was like, oh my gosh, is it 3 o'clock? Which I don't know if it was part of the superstition because she told me it was 3 o'clock, and then I was like, oh, it's 3 o'clock, what Leah said, but it was still just that connection of that strange feeling. And so I didn't do homework late anymore because I didn't want that feeling anymore.
Wow. Do you guys believe in ghosts or spirits from that have passed? Do you believe that they actually visit us and touch you in some minute way or in some significant way? Do you feel like you've ever been visited, or there's a possibility of visitations, even if they haven't visited you, that they might have visited others? What do you think about that?
Oh, I definitely think there are presence of other spirits, and like as in terms of like possessing other people. I've never experienced that before myself, but I definitely believe it's a possibility.
Yeah, so whether it's the actual the phantom, or it's some sort of ghost, or maybe it's just some sort of mark. I remember vividly when I was a kid, my dad and I went to go visit New York City, and this is after the fall of the Twin Towers, maybe about 5 or 6 years after that,
Yeah.
when they still were finishing cleaning up. They hadn't built a new building yet, and we were on a tour of the city, and we were in the southern district. I can't remember where the districts were, but we were in the southern part, and everyone was laughing and having a good time. And as soon as we turned the corner, I just felt like I just walked through like a waterfall or something, and the whole group got quiet. I didn't know where I was necessarily; it just felt like something was different. And then the tour guide said, "Oh, that's where the Twin Towers were." And I just remember thinking, "Good night! Like something terrible happened here. This place is marked. You can feel something different."
Wow. Yeah, I believe that's true. And actually, I had that experience too because I was working for IBM at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and we went to help rebuild their infrastructure. So they're asking people from IBM to volunteer to go there and help them bring up Wall Street was one of the things we helped to do.
Right.
So I went there. Now we were not able to get close enough to see that impacted area, but just being there, even though I don't know if it was a throw off from people that were there who were close enough to witness the feeling of everyone, or if some of the people there actually saw this take place. But the atmosphere, even though it wasn't as gloomy as you would think it was, just the mood in your head captured the absence of those people that were there, and maybe their spirits entered that domain where even you felt an impact of it. And I literally felt an impact from it.
Yeah, it is jarring. And my dad said the last time he felt it was when he was at, I guess it's somewhere in Hawaii where they have the tribute to the USS Arizona that was sunk in Pearl Harbor at the time, at the right at the beginning of World War II. He said that's the last time he felt that kind of feeling, just being there where all those soldiers died and seeing the boat on the bottom of the ocean, and it's just jarring.
Yeah. What do you think will be the part of your lives, either one of you, where you think you would experience the most frightening thing that you could experience? For instance, me, I'm thinking right now, when I'm on my deathbed I think that'll be the most chilling and scary part of my life, even though I have this chilling, scary part of my life because of my dog's health right now. So I've been suffering through that this week, right? But then you start thinking that when someone is potentially having a health problem where it could affect the life of them, hopefully my dog's going to be very safe. At the end of the broadcast, I'm going to hope everyone crosses their fingers for our dog whose exam is tomorrow. But you start thinking about your own terminal life on this planet.
Yeah, mortality, right?
Yeah, and I start thinking about when I'm on my deathbed, I wonder what kind of thoughts I'm going to be having. Do you ever think in your mind what the darkest moments in your life will be?
I don't like thinking about that kind of stuff, really. You know, so hopefully, you know, I'd be at peace in those moments. It wouldn't just be filled with, oh, I wish I had, or I wish I hadn't moments of trying to revisit various moments of my life, but I don't know.
I think it would be just the absence of my sweetheart and our son, either or. Just that idea of them no longer existing here with me. That would be my darkest moment instead of me leaving.
Yeah, you know.
That's a good point. I mean, it would like carve out a portion of your soul to have that person that's special to you disappear from your life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think in fact, a couple programs ago, I talked about this topic. I think it was before I started doing shows for this audience. And I was talking about myself. I really, when I suffer greatly when other people's lives are approaching their end or do hit their end. And I think when I'm on my deathbed, I think I won't be as traumatically impacted by my own death. What do you think the same way? Do you think that when you see people die, I'm really impacted by that. I'm even impacted by our dog. And we've had several dogs who have passed because, of course, their life expectancy is like 12, 13 years.
Sure, but it never makes it easier.
Never doesn't make it easy. But I think when I'm in my deathbed, I think I feel like I'll be okay with it. Do you guys feel the same way, more than you're impacted by someone else who's passed away? What do you think about that?
Yeah, for me, I think it would feel less impactful if it was me dying because it's something I can't change. Like, it's happening, I'm going to die. But if it was somebody else and I knew that within that timeline, oh, they have this many days, how soon are they going to leave? And knowing that the loss of them becomes a permanent change that I can't ever fix, that would be more traumatic for me.
It becomes like a really ugly scar the rest of your life.
Yeah. You know, I think of other stuff too. So I tell you guys, it's funny because I'm telling you what I think. I wish some of the people that are texting right now would tell me what they think. But I'll tell you what I think. Sometimes I think about religion, and I'm not a particularly religious guy. But then I think about religion, and I think about the promise to be brought into heaven for existence that never ends. Immortality, or your soul is living
in perpetuity, right?
Yeah. So if I think about that, and I think now, hopefully we will have evolved to a different type of being where we'll be okay with life forever. But if you think of it from a human perspective, if I think it's not going to end, my life is never going to end, and I just think about that continuation, even if I'm a better being at that point, more evolved, and I just think it's a scary thing to think that you're going to live forever. The finality seems to make me more comfortable than just thinking
it's like a satisfying finish at the end of a movie or something.
Yeah, it's just that I feel scared to think that it's never ending. It's kind of a scary thing. Did you ever think about that?
Well, I mean, we are particularly religious, and for us, there's a lot of peace that comes with that. It's not necessarily living forever and like having no purpose. Like, we're not just going to be up, strumming harps all day long, but we just get to enjoy being with our families again. We get to enjoy doing the experiences. We get to just keep on learning, keep on growing, keep on advancing. So it's more of like a different stage in life, kind of like graduating college might be a different stage. But nobody wants to be in college forever. It would just be your chance to do something else, but still with the same people you enjoy now. We find there's a lot of peace with it.
You can't be in college forever. Think of the debt you would have.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And someone told me
the loans off if you don't stop going to school, though.
Someone was telling me at a coffee shop that they're going to be a chiropractor. And he said by the time he gets out of school to be a chiropractor, he's going to be in debt over $120,000 to be a chiropractor.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, that's exactly why in 2.5 Men, the brother was living with Charlie Sheen because he wasn't dead. He was a chiropractor, if you remember that. So you guys are a religious couple where you're thinking that there's going to be a heaven and you're going to be in heaven to be reunited with each other, your families, possibly your pets as well. So do you believe in reincarnation? Do you think that when you go to meet your maker, will there be a point in that intervention where you're not going to be prepared and you're going to be sent back to Earth, reincarnated to live more life until you're ready to be accepted in that realm? What do you think about that?
It wouldn't necessarily be a reincarnation. It's more of a linear progression. We are just trying to become our best selves. So it's not like I would inhabit somebody's body that was foreign to me. It would just be the concept of the resurrection, where it's our body, our mortal body, but made into a perfect frame. So that, we would just have perfect bodies. We wouldn't have illness, wouldn't have disease. Because really our bodies combining with our spirit that gives us joy. That's what would be the soul. And, without those bodies, we're not able to do certain things, play instruments, make love, those kind of things that we enjoy doing.
Yeah.
It's just such a different existence as what we would imagine, just being a spirit. So that's not the point. We would want to be reunited again with a perfect body. And it would be our body. It would look like us and still be us.
Oh, is that okay? So it's not really transition into coming here. It's a linear transgression, but it's sort of a reincarnation of yourself back on Earth.
It's more of like a restoration of ourselves, of our perfect selves. So we're fallen from heaven. We have this period of mortality where things are imperfect. Disasters happen in the world. We have an imperfect existence. We're imperfect beings making terrible choices, but we're still able to learn from those experiences. And after this finite period of time, we do have that moment of peace where everything is made right.
Oh, okay. So maybe I'm a little confused on this, but okay. So you'll have to explain this to me because sometimes I get thrown. Remember, I told you I use only 3% of my brain. Everyone else uses 5%.
No, I mean, and there are different versions of theologies. Even amongst Christianity, there's different ideas about what resurrection looks like, what's the afterlife looks like, what heaven looks like.
Yeah. So now, so I said, like, I'm a little bit confused here, but I tried to listen to you, but then I lost track a bit. So you die, and then at that moment of death, if you haven't reached that linear level of success, did you say that there's a reincarnation at that point? Maybe I lost you a bit. Explain that one more time.
So at death, that's when your spirit leaves your body. And then the resurrection is when they come back together. So you're not coming back in a different person's body or a different creature's body. You're coming back to your body, but your body's been perfected, without any illnesses or...
Okay, so now here's where I'm thrown off with that. Because you said that when you go to heaven, or whatever you want to call it, that you would be recast with your family, your children...
It's reunification, right? You'd be reunited.
Okay, so now how does that happen? Because, for instance, JD dies before Nina does. Hopefully you'll both die on the same exact day, same exact moment, right? But say you die first, and you're brought into heaven, and then you've got to come back down as yourself. But in the meantime, Nina was still here for another 3 days more because she's so sorrowful that she lost you. So it's only 3 days before she dies. But let's say it's 5 years later, and she's up there, and she comes back. Now there's a 5-year differential. And there could be a 20-year difference. It could be someone maybe you met when you were 25, and JD died at the age of 26, and Nina lived till 55, and then you come back. How are you going to synchronize that where you both are reunited up there and everyone's happy when people are at different levels?
Right. So it's the idea of when does heaven start, right? And so what does heaven look like? And so if after we die, that separation, our spirits would just go to one place, whether that is, it's not part of this world, perhaps maybe it's in another dimension, maybe it's another planet, like who knows where heaven exactly is. But once we're there, we would wait until the rest of this mortal probation, this mankind living on earth, life is done, at which point God says, okay, enough is enough. It's the end of the world, and now we're going to have that final resurrection. We're going to have the judgment day, and then you'll be restored altogether. You can have that body again,
Hmm.
and then it becomes more of a heaven, right? Because you're with all your family, you've got your body back.
Yeah, so the resurrection part happens like for multiple people at the same time.
Right. It would be like, after the end of the world kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you think is going to cause the end of the world? Is it going to be that God or something calling us and saying, "I've had it," because you use the word, "I've had enough"? Is there going to be that moment?
Enough, right?
Is there going to be that moment where he says he's had enough and closes it down, or is it going to be? Do you think it's going to be a major war that closes it down and he doesn't have to worry about it? What do you think is going to think that ends the world?
I think there will be just multiple triggers. The loss of humanity across the globe, just natural disasters, things being out of sync with the natural planet.
Yeah, I mean, the 20th century was really the century for genocide. I mean, that was one of the ugliest centuries we've had in quite a long time in terms of the number of people that died, whether it was from wars or genocide or diseases. And, things just seem to be getting worse.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, I don't know when the point would be, but it would have to be really bad on all fronts.
Mm-hmm. Do you think Do you think humanity needs to destroy itself and then have a few beings that exist and recapture ourselves? Do you think we need to? Do you think there's got to be an elimination before there is a progression?
Oh, like a second flood, so to speak.
Yeah, second flood, right? Do you think so?
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd make it on the boat.
Oh, you broke up a bit. What did Nina say?
Oh, I said hopefully not another flood. I don't know if I'd make it on the boat.
Oh, I thought you said I don't want to be naked on the boat. You broke up a bit.
You get to wear clothes. It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Noah's not that hard of a guy.
Yeah, so I don't know.
I don't know, but from the typical story from the Bible, after that Noah's Ark, the dilemma happened, the great deluge. I mean, that was the original symbol of the rainbow was God's promise that I'm never going to do that sort of thing again. Yeah, I'm not going to wipe out all of mankind again.
Mm.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, so from the classic Christian point of view, that probably won't happen.
Okay. Let me read a couple more questions, and I'm going to ask you guys how to get a copy of the book.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you to raise the book up and show it to us again. But let's say Ed had a question here. He says, I think humans have been genetically altered by aliens. I think we trickled on that a little bit. We talked about taking over a human body, whether they take it over from a distance in space and beam into a body because they need to be able to breathe Earth's atmosphere and be able to live on Earth based upon encapsulating that particular person's body. But Ed's asking, he says, I think humans have been genetically altered by aliens via an insemination of a female woman, and then a birth is being done by an alien and a human. Is there any interaction you think between aliens and humans at the moment?
Oh, at the moment, I don't know. I don't know for what purpose or.
Nope.
I'm just curious what the genetic alterations would be, if they'd be better or
from what to what. What did we start as? That's like the idea with the Prometheus movie.
Like, are they taller? Are they more beautiful? Are they smarter?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
And did they modify like the monkey or something? And that's how we have this course of human evolution. Those are interesting things to think about.
Yeah. Since you guys are do you believe in evolution? How do you think that humans came here? Or developed through evolution, or were we the first? Do you believe in? Okay, so there's an Adam and Eve, and then there were animals made. What do you think? Evolution, or Adam and Eve were magically here based upon God and the Bible and all that? How did it start?
I think it's definitely a combination of both. Like, God did create Adam and Eve. He also created things to be able to progress and evolve on their own. So he's not like puppet maker telling everybody exactly what to do and every creature what to do, but he allowed for that evolutionary change as we adapted to Earth and as adapted within their own sphere.
Yeah, I don't think God is just a theologian. I think he's also maybe a botanist. He's also a biologist.
Yeah.
He is
an artist.
He's an astronomer. If he is the perfect, it means he knows everything about everything. And so in the classic sense, did he create Adam and Eve? Was it in a lab? I mean, I don't know. I don't know how he created them specifically. Maybe it was a genetic alteration. But it wasn't just a poof, here you are kind of thing. I'm sure he was a scientist about it when he did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, if there is God the Plumber listening, I need a phone call because I've got a leak in the sink here. So if there's a God the Plumber, 609-467-4000, okay? Jack of all trades. How come Jesus is not named Jack if he's Jack of all trades? Come on now. Right? So let me ask you guys, the name of the book is?
It is The Blue Jewel, a Riveting Space Opera, but it's available on Kindle,
Yeah.
the Amazon store, so digitally. If you have Kindle Unlimited, it's free, and so you can add it to your ebook.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And many people that do have Kindles that like to read a lot, they do like to use the Kindle Unlimited program. You get access to just this wide volume of just an entire library on Amazon, and you can just check out as many books as you want to read. When you're done reading, put it back, and it's like a monthly subscription, which is very nice. But if you're interested in our book, you can search The Blue Jewel, J.D. Richards' book. J.D. Richards is me, the author, and it should come right up. The Blue Jewel, J.D. Richards' book, and it'll come up. You'll be able to purchase that.
Okay. Now it's on Amazon. Is it also on Kobo? Because I've been downloading some books on Kobo, Kobo. Is it on there?
This one, no, not specifically.
Okay. And when you write books, now you've got your editor right next to you, right?
That's right.
Okay. Now that's actually how you do it? You use your wife as the editor. That helps out a whole lot, right?
It's great to have a support group, but we did ask a couple of friends to serve as beta readers. So, I mean, I hear the whole story from him all the time, so I already know different parts that are going to happen, but we asked a couple of friends and family to be beta readers and to read the first manuscript for us.
Right. And when people say editors, they think, just making sure all the commas and spelling mistakes are taken care of. But really, there's a lot of different kinds of editors. So there would be like content editors, which is like a beta reader would be, just making sure the story kind of flows and it makes sense. You have line editors, which is, I think, my area of weakness, is just making sure the dialogue flows properly, making sure the story content is appropriate in terms of its linearity and storytelling. And then you have the copy editors, of course, who do go in and make sure all the your P's and Q's are right and all your grammar is fine and those kinds of things.
Okay, I was going to end it, but I'll end it on a couple questions. I've got Jeffrey here who asked, Jeffrey says, when Jesus died, 3 days later, he was reincarnated with a perfect body. Is that true? He was reincarnated with a perfect body?
So that is what many Christians believe. He wasn't just reincarnated, might not be how the Christians would describe it. It would be a resurrection, meaning that he was restored to his perfect frame. So he was no longer in a mortal body. He was now a perfect spirit inside of a perfect body.
And Jeffrey thinks
the classic telling of it.
So Jeffrey believes, and I think you guys said, that when Jesus came back and he's now resurrected into his perfect body, you guys believe that when you come back, you would be more perfected.
Yeah, that's the point, right? So we believe that Jesus Christ not only conquered sin and pain and all sorts of the afflictions that we can be our comforter, we also believe that he conquered death. So that ultimate separation from God because we're sinners, he overcame that. And that separation from having our spirits separated from our bodies, he overcame that as well. So we can come back and be our perfect selves.
Yeah. Well, I guess I've never come back because look at the wreck I am still. So I
just need a little more work. It's all right.
Yeah, I gotta come back 10, 11, or 12 times to have something perfect happen to me, right?
It's like the car wash. Just keep going through.
Right. Recycle. Turnstile. Dave's in the turnstile. Another question here is, do you think God created Adam and Eve type people on other planets?
Yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, if you're a God and you have the entire universe at your disposal and you enjoy having so many children, why wouldn't you start it somewhere else? I mean, there would be no reason not to. I'm not going to tell him no.
Right. Do you think, and I just, when I read people's questions and I started thinking about other questions similar. So Sparky had asked that question, do you believe God created an Adam and Eve on other planets? Do you think that the devil created bad beings on other planets? Do you think that there's the devil that created the bad beings? Is there that separation? God created these group of people that are generally good people that are being reincarnated or resurrected into better
That's an
beings?
interesting question.
And do you think on the opposite side, there's generally bad people who are reincarnated to be worse and worse and worse? What do you think about that?
I don't think so, because the classic idea in Christianity is that the devil would have been, or Lucifer would have been one of God's many children that was cast out of heaven for rebellion. So he is not a creator; he was only a destroyer. And so he can come to this life and tempt us away from doing good things. He can only destroy; he cannot create. He would not be able to have his own Adam and Eve experience.
Okay. Okay.
And so those who who maybe aren't as good, they still have an option to become good without the influence of Satan or the devil.
Okay. Well, you guys were tremendous. Do you have a website for your book or for yourselves, or do they look for you on Facebook? How do they do that?
Yeah, sure. So I do have a website. It's jdrichards.space. So instead of .com, it's .space, .space.
Oh, nice.
That's where you can find my website and my bio.
It's really tiny.
I think we can not see
You might need
it.
to post it on.
We'll just send you a page.
We'll send you a link and do what we can to do that. But then also, Karina, she's actually a well-established graphic designer. So she's been doing graphic design work for many years. Her company is called Machka Designs.
Machka.
Yes, it's spelled Mackska. It's a Hungarian word because I used to live in Hungary for a little while in my 20s.
Yeah,
So.
Machka means cat. So it's, Machka or cat designs.
Yeah. Well, thanks for reminding me that I'm hungry. So we're going to let everyone go. Thanks for being part of the show. You were a great guest. Check out their book.
Thank you very much. The pleasure is on our side.
It's called The Blue Jewel. Check it out. Get it on Amazon. Check these guys out. You gave out your website. Anyone that wants to hear the show can play it back because it's going to exist on Facebook after we hang up. So thanks again for being on the show. But before everyone leaves, let me ask all you guys that are watching the show right now, and there's a bunch of you watching, and you guys as well, can you just cross your fingers so the dog has a healthy exam tomorrow, okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right, guys, thanks so much for being on the show. And we'll say goodbye to you for tonight. We'll do a show on Sunday as well. So I'll see you guys back here on Sunday. Thanks for being on the show. When you write another book, come back on the show and tell us about how you fit Dave Darren into your book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Will do.
One of the characters. I promise you won't die early.
No, make me the bad guy. Make me the villain. Okay.
You want to be the villain? All right. Dave Darren does sound like a good villain name.
Yeah, it does, right? Or make me a Klingon because look, I'm losing my hair and I've got the long hair, so all I need is the Klingon. So that's what I'm doing. I got my hairstyle ready so that anyone that sees me and is involved in Star Trek Discovery, they'll hire me. Because I'm
our agent will be in touch with your agent.
There we go. That's it. All right, guys. Again, thanks a lot for being on the show. Thanks for the listeners for checking it out. And we'll see you guys next Sunday. I'll play the closing theme, and that's all we got for tonight. Again, thanks, guys, for being on the show.
Thank you very much.
Cool, guys. See ya. Bye-bye.